And we're live. And that to me was just symptomatic of not seeing the hosts as like real three-dimensional people. Like I'm somebody's dad. And, you know, so like when I view it through that lens, it's like, oh yeah, well he just doesn't see me. He sees me as a person on his computer monitor, not like a real guy.
Yep. Right. And then like, this is where I'm going to get really insulting. This will get me in a lot of trouble, but like, I'm not a particularly intelligent person. I think I'm slightly above average, but barely, if that. Maybe just average, right? That said, sometimes we're dealing with people who are dumber than me, and that's pretty fucking scary because I am not that bright. So sometimes we're dealing with people who genuinely believe anything they read on the internet, or genuinely cannot understand context, or genuinely cannot understand the world around them. Those are some of those dangerous people. Those are also some of the people who might show up at your front fucking door one day with a gun. You know, so I don't know. Those, like, sometimes you're dealing with some, like, when you put yourself out there, you're dealing with some really crazy, scary people. And unfortunately, I have an anxiety disorder. And so when you talked about mental health earlier, that's my biggest issue. Is like I'm so terrified that one of these like crazy pieces of shit are gonna fucking show up my front door. And I've had somebody show up my front door. I've had a couple people now show up my front door. So
do they have bad intent? Like I've had a lot of people show up at my front door, but usually they like me.
I had one guy had like really scary intent. He wanted to be my best friend, and he said he Googled. He's like, I don't even remember driving here. He was like super creepy. I had another guy show up at my front door, and he's like, I don't like what you have to say on the internet. I was like, okay, and I just closed the door, and that was it. And he left.
Wait,
like, I'm not going to engage with
that
guy.
That initial first guy, I want to know a little more. Like he showed up and said, I don't even remember driving here. I want to be your best friend.
So I open my front door, and I'm like expecting a delivery, and it's some just dude in a delivery van, like a flower delivery truck. And I opened the door, and I'm like, hey, man, what's up? You got a delivery? And he's like, no, man, I'm here for you. And I'm like, oh, what? And he's like, yeah, we're going to be friends. And I'm like, we're going to what now? And so I didn't have a gun at the time. I do now. But I had a baseball bat that I kept next to the door. So I reached over and grabbed my baseball bat where he couldn't see me doing it. And I'm like, so tell me your story, buddy. And he goes, well, I really relate to you. And I really like what you're doing. And I really like, I like your videos and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is all good stuff so far. I'm not like baseball bat ready, you know? And he's like,
oh, yeah?
Right. It's exactly that. It's exactly that. I'm just like, because it's over here in the corner. And my friend Chad, my roommate Chad, he's the one who put it there. And he's like, in case, you know, just in case. I'm like, all right. Well, this was the in case. This was the case, right? So I lean over, I'm grabbing the fucking thing. I'm like, all right, tell me more. I've got it here behind the door, you know? And he's like, I know, watching your videos and like listening to all this stuff. And I just knew, like, I knew we had so much in common with the video games and the abuse and growing up abused. And I'm like, I just knew all I had to do was meet you. One day, if I met you, we'd be best friends. And so I'm watching one of your videos, and you mentioned that you lived in Northwest Arkansas. And I don't even remember doing it, but I remember flopping over to Internet Explorer, and I searched for your name, and your address was there. I'd just gotten doxxed for one of the first times. And it goes, and there was your address. So I got into my car, and I started driving, and now I'm here. And I don't even remember driving here. I just know that we're going to be best friends. And I'm like,
gee, this is scary as fuck.
Dude, the red flag for me was Internet Explorer. This guy's fucked.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, dude, so this is not how this is done. Like, any chances of us becoming friends was shot to shit the moment you rang my doorbell, okay? And he goes, no, don't say that. Don't say that. And I'm like, dude, who do you work for? Like, is that your boss's van? Because your boss probably wouldn't like you driving your van here to do something like that, don't you think? And he's like, you're right. I shouldn't have done this. I should have thought. I'm like, yeah, you definitely should have thought. Go home and write me a letter the way anybody else would, and we'll see. I'm not saying there's a 0% chance. I'm saying you screwed it up pretty bad, but maybe if your letter is like cool, like maybe we'll talk in email, and then we'll see what happens from there. But dude, I've got plenty. Yeah, I got plenty of friends, but you can't show up at someone's door like this, okay? Like, it's not cool. It's scary. There's dangerous people out there, and I don't know if you're dangerous. No, dude, I'm not dangerous. I'm here to be your friend. I just want to be your best friend. I want to be close. I need a friend. I'm like, and I get that. And I get that. So go home and write me a letter.
I want to go.
Now this is making me sad.
You got to go Chris Hansen at that point. Let me ask you a question, Bill. Did you bring anything with you? Well, what do you mean? Is there a plastic bag in your car full of items? Perhaps? Well, yeah, I brought some things, but you know, that doesn't mean I'm intending on doing it. What'd you bring? Well, there's a stun gun. Yeah. What else? There's a club. Yeah. What else? A couple rolls of duct tape, some plastic sheeting.
Heard you're down for
line.
pegging.
Well, I heard you mention how you like peanut butter cups, so a few of those that I've placed leading out to the back of the
Two
van.
things I know about you is you like peanut butter cups and you're open to pegging.
I brought magic cards. I brought magic cards. I figure, I bind you, tie you up a little bit, feed you some peanut butter cups. We play a few games of Magic. I stun you a few times. We have a good old time. Come on.
His letter was very much a manifesto. It had no paragraphs, no periods. It was all just words vomited into an email.
Oh God!
And it was just like fucking 3 pages of I'm like, I'm done. I don't even know what any of this crazy shit is or what it means. But
What was if it wouldn't divulge too much about him, that's private. Like, what was kind of the vibe of the manifesto?
I skimmed it because it was unreadable the way it was written, and so I was just like, I don't want to even get engaged at this point because I've got too much shit going on. My marriage is finally starting to fall apart. It was like the first beginning of that, and I'm dealing with that. And we were looking at buying a house, which is why we bought the house, by the way. I wanted to get the fuck out of that apartment once I got doxxed and people started showing up, dude.
That
makes sense.
Yeah, I had a similar
kind of
story that went the other way, right? So I'm at home. We're doing whatever home stuff. And the doorbell rings, and I come there, and it's a stranger who's in my demographic. I'll say a young guy, like 18 years old or something. And he goes, and he's got his Irish accent or something, and he's like, Woody, I came here all the way from Ireland to see you. That's my Irish accent. And I'm just like, oh my God. Like, this is so amazing. Like, what a super fan. He came here from Ireland to see me. And he's like, yeah. And I'm visiting University of North Carolina 30 minutes down the road. But, those 2 reasons. And I'm like, right. Yeah, he came from Ireland to see me. But he turned out to be really cool. Yeah, it always went the same way, roughly. They'd be really nice. I do my best to, ask them about themselves. We'd do a selfie, and, that was it.
That's when it's helpful to have a very young demographic, I would imagine. Like the people that would show up to your doorstep, Woody, versus the people who would show up at some other people's doorsteps. The demographic, even if you get a crazy fucking 18-year-old or 16-year-old who's brought there by a guardian or something like that, what's the worst could happen? But when you've got I don't know, some 40-year-old dude who's become obsessed with you or whatever, that's when it's really scary, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm thinking about I hope mentioning his name doesn't cause any issues. Hickok45 is really into gun issues, and he's if people don't know, Hickok45 is an encyclopedia of gun knowledge, it seems. And he was a teacher, so he just sort of lays out and teaches you about these weapons. Mm-hmm. And I can only imagine that he has guys who are also, I don't know how old he is, I'm going to call him 50, who are also 50, who I want to be your friend, and, maybe just a little off-center.
Yeah. I mean, I've watched Hickok 45 videos where I've thought, I want to be this guy's friend. He seems awesome. The little things he'll know, he'll shoot his gun and be like, now the thing to know about this, a little bit of history, is actually in 45, they did another version post-war that had XYZ in preparation for Korea, or what would be Korea. They didn't know anything. He'll have just a litany of details, and I'm sitting there learning something about a gun that I don't even care about. I'm like, really? That's fascinating.
He's a nice guy. I've met him 4 or 5 different times, at various gun shows and meetups and stuff like that.